255, we're broadcasting from the Laramie Plains Civic Center, and gosh, we're working to make you an informed voter. And my informed voter card tells us your choice is important. I agree. The decisions you make at the polls or do not make by not voting have a direct effect on your life and the lives of others. I agree with that too. Whoa. Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? We hear ghost voices in studio. In studio, we hear ghost voices. Hey, we've got in-studio guest Chris Clevin, county commissioner candidate, committed to protecting your rights and upholding state law. Brand new flashy door hangers, sir.
Absolutely, man. Sorry about that. The video just got done uploaded and started to play.
That's good. Got to know when it's working. Got to work. And we have some sponsors that we need to give a little credit to making this segment possible. First of all, Martindale's Western Store, 217 Grand Avenue in historic downtown Laramie, and Pole Mountain Pharmacy, dedicated to the health and wellness of Southeast Wyoming from their location at 4th and Harney. And those fine folks at I-80 Towing. Have you seen their new shop, their new outpost? 3830 Cherrywood Loop East. That's just south of 307 Meats out on that loop, and you can take a first left after the port of entry as you're going south on Highway 287, and you'll stroll right in to I-80 Towing and Automotive Services. Say hi to Tom, Amanda, Melissa, Mark, and all the gang every day of the week. They're available 24/7, but by God, you don't want them. You don't want them every day. You don't want them in your lives every day, except for when you absolutely need them. When you need them, they'll be there. Chris Clevin, thank you for letting me get the important credits for making this show possible out on the air.
Not a problem, man.
You've been busy. I saw you at the Albany County Fairgrounds with the junior livestock sale.
Yes, I was.
And did you buy the farm, mister?
I did not buy the farm. I don't have that kind of money to buy the farm.
Did not buy the farm.
Nope.
Steer. The average steer price, $9,000.
Yeah, it was. They were staying about $9,000. And
I don't know what it's cost to feed a steer in that project, but hopefully $9,000 is above and beyond that number.
Just to give you an idea for the grain, the grain for even my milk cows used to be $250 a ton. It went up to $650 a ton about a year ago. So that you can get an idea for those steers with how big they are at 1,300 pounds average. They eat a lot.
There were some chunky monkeys.
Yes,
and
there were.
and lambs and goats, 75-pound goats and 50 and 60-pound animals. They were going pretty much proportional in weight.
Yeah.
For each of those animals. And pigs, good prices on pigs.
Yes, they were.
Pigs were popular. We like our bacon.
I was teasing my son all year because he did a pig in the show, and was telling him I need a full freezer of bacon, but he's like, nope, I'm selling that one, Dad. So yeah, he did a good sale. I think he got third in his class, so he was on the kind of the earlier stages of the sale. So
and what's your boy's name?
Shane.
Shane.
Yep.
Well, congratulations, Shane.
Absolutely.
From all of us right here at the Talk Shop, me, myself, and I.
And real quick, I want to add, good job for all the kids. I think.
Totally
I think
true.
the final number that my wife wrote down was right at $860,000 that was raised for all of our kids just in our county.
Albany County, thank you.
Absolutely
Wonderful. I took a stroll through the activities building and the crafts that were projects for folks, photography and different paintings and what have you, artwork. It's all magnificent. Our future looks bright, Albany County. We just got to get these kids continuing along their path, and a trajectory will take them to success, no doubt. Their success, our success, right here in Albany County. And Chris, you are strolling into the final days of the primary election.
Less than 2 weeks out.
Less than 2 weeks. We've got August 20th as primary election day. Have you voted yet?
I actually have.
Yeah, early voter are you?
I did early voted because, like everybody in life, things.
You don't need a reason. You don't need a reason. It's your right.
I do.
Vote.
But,
you voted.
yeah.
I'm just proud. I didn't see your sticker. That's why I asked. If you're a voter and you don't wear your sticker.
Yep.
By gosh, why?
There's a good
Be
friend of
proud.
mine that he's never voted, and so I kind of gave him a hard time. I said, I need a picture of you with your I voted sticker. I said, I don't care who you vote for. I just need a picture of you with your voted sticker, and a blue one for you and a white one for your wife. That way I know that you didn't share it.
Nice,
So,
nice. Hey, you are you're a known quantity for some. How about introducing yourself for those that may not know you, that you want to know you in the best light possible?
Absolutely.
Let it fire.
Well, I'm Chris Clevin, and as you said, I'm running for Albany County Commissioner. I've got 20 plus years of experience in public service. Not necessarily the public service that we're all used to, but actually in the dirt, working and being out there every day.
Dun, 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 dun.
So I started out as a volunteer firefighter in EMT, both in our county, and then I moved on to becoming a law enforcement officer in our county as well. So for about the last 17 years, that's what I've been doing. I've been actually out protecting our community, helping to solve crimes, and at the same time, actually reading state statutes, understanding state statutes, and knowing how to read them to be able to actually make sure that we're following through with the Constitution and the state statute on everything we do.
You talk about using Wyoming state law and the Constitution, just as you just mentioned, to weigh every decision, reducing regulation, and we're free people, plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Apply that to the most important key issue that you've heard knocking on doors around the county.
It's hard to say the most because everybody has their own concerns.
All right, so
that they have.
So highlight three and go on one. How about
that? One of them last night had to do with, believe it or not, the dark skies. And as I'm talking with the gentleman about the dark sky law, I started to have to research it a little bit, and I learned that in 2003, the state statute the state legislatures created a statute talking about dark sky, and specifically what it was we want to try to preserve our dark skies in Wyoming. There's
light pollution, go away.
Exactly.
Prevent it.
And
right?
The state law actually says that the utility companies have to provide free of charge shielding devices. So when you have those old school barn lights that are just like a 360-degree light, technically the utility company has to be able to provide a shielding device to be able to reduce that light pollution upward and force it down, which is pretty interesting. So that was a big issue to that gentleman. But as we started talking about different things and being able to force compliance, we were able to talk about the statutes and say, hey, the statute says that they have to provide it. It doesn't actually say that they have to actually do this. So as much as frustrated it would be for one person, we were able to actually have a conversation to be able to say the statute doesn't say that they have to actually do it. So if we want to do something like that, we have to change the law. The county commissioners don't make law. All they're going to do is administer the state law at the county level. So we can only work with what's currently on the books.
I appreciate you going in that. As you knock on doors, you found that issue, dark lighting, dark laws. I hadn't heard.
Yeah,
I have not encountered that one myself through the Candidate Awareness Tour 2024 or 2022. So thank you for that, sharing that, and it is important. How important is the flexibility to represent both the ones that voted for you and the ones that did not vote for you?
Absolutely.
As you go forward in the election process?
Yeah. Probably the second biggest thing that I should say biggest thing, but one of the larger issues is going to be the Casper Aquifer. When you stop and take a look at that, I was talking with one gentleman explaining this pamphlet to him and where I come from. And he says, the one big thing, how do you stand on the aquifer? And I said, regardless of how I say that again.
2 feet straight above it.
Yep. And I said, regardless of how I stand on the aquifer, the question is how do we work together on both sides to fix the problem? And he looks at me, he goes, well, what do you think about that? And I said, well, what we need to do is if we want development in that area, especially a lot more housing, then we need to look into actually creating a water and sewer district, because the concern is the septic systems. Now, if we take out the argument and the emotion about the septic systems and whether or not the water wells are contaminated or the septic fields are contaminating, we take that out of the equation, That's exactly what the city's doing. The city is developing on the Casper Aquifer, which is that area behind the new the Walmart up there, and they're able to do that because they have a centralized water and sewer system.
Who owns water in the state of Wyoming?
The state of Wyoming actually owns the water.
By statute.
By statute. And believe it or not, the very next, in the Constitution, the very next article actually talks about the development of I guess you could say, an organization within a department within Wyoming that manages the water within the protected waters of Wyoming.
So your first day, you're elected county commissioner. What action do you take first, and what's in your sights to take action? Is it an overreach situation that you'd like to rein back, or is it, what do you anticipate?
So I've thought long and hard about it. Probably the very first thing I want to do, honestly, is sit down with Pete Gosar, sit down with Terry Jones, and say, hey, look, we need to come out in the open, and we need to tell developers, and we need to tell landowners that the county is open. We need development. We need housing. That's going to be number one thing. Now, with that housing and the development, we can start taking a look at the Casper Aquifer. We can start taking a look at the water and sewer as far as special districts. It's not that hard to actually do those and create them. I've been the only one that's actually created a road district, which is a special district, in the last 14 years. So they're not hard. I have the experience to do it. Believe it or not, when I built our road district, the county said, we don't really have a plan for you. You have to follow state statute. But because of my background, I was able to go ahead and grab the statutes and start going down line by line. Okay, we have to do A, we have to do B, and I started putting it all together. I used the county as a resource to gather for all the property value prices and everything else and all the landowner names, but I had to go out door to door, talking to every landowner and say, this is what I think would work really well in our community. And I think the very first thing that we do is we sit down and we say, we're open. Let's get some developers. Let's get some landowners at the table and start having that conversation. What is it going to take to help build some houses, some affordable housing? We start doing that. The next thing you know, we're going to have businesses coming in. I mean, at the end of the day, the city has failed its job as far as trying to promote growth and substantial housing. So we need to look at the county. How can the county provide that for our citizens?
How do you balance the city wanting to expand city limits and the county's best interest as a whole, as you represent everybody in Albany County as a county commissioner?
Mm-hmm. When I started doing some door knocking up in the Sherman Hill subdivision, I learned a lot that at one point the city was trying to annex everything all the way up on Grand Avenue, all the way to the Grand Avenue exit. And I think, I don't know enough about the background of why they were doing that, but at least the way it was explained to me is they were trying to annex simply to gain those resources that they had. However, at the same time, they weren't really providing a whole lot more services for that area because they had their own road district. It wasn't a big deal for them to, as far as for the city, to have to add it. Think about what they added south of town. Think about the infrastructure they had to add to go all the way down there with the water and the sewer and everything else. That's a big deal to have to spend that kind of money. And if they're able to essentially just kind of land grab and say, we're going to grab this part, we're going to grab that part, they're not putting a whole lot of money into it, and then it just causes the city to expand. I would like to see the county as far as the growth with the county, because let's face it, there's a lot of people that are upset with the building codes and especially the landscape issues that are going on with anybody trying to do building. You take a look at, Blodorn? They had some really big issues with them trying to get all the permitting done, and they wouldn't even allow them to move lumber into the finished product or the finished building until they had the occupancy permit, but they wouldn't give them the occupancy permit until they moved the lumber from a different location. It's like, that's the whole purpose of the building, is to put the lumber in. And it got to the point where the CEO had to come in and actually talk at a city council meeting and essentially threatened to say, we'll sell the whole building, we'll move out to the county. This is ridiculous. And then a couple days later, or a few days, maybe a week later, all the permits were approved. And so that's the type of bureaucracy that the county specifically can get away from, because we don't have those same regulations. And I think businesses will absolutely take advantage of that and come in and try to and grow and help Laramie prosper.
You mentioned Pete Gozar and Terry Jones, current county commissioners that will be carrying forward in the service to Albany County as commissioners. Have you visited with outgoing Commissioner Sue Ibarra?
I have not yet.
Okay, and if elected, what do you see? What do you see being an opportunity for revenue enhancement that might not have been discussed or battered around just yet? Do you have any ideas with respect to revenue generation?
The idea of revenue generation, I don't like so much, because typically that's going to come down to the actual constituents and having to pay more for services. And so when I think of revenue generators with my background, the easiest thing to think of is, red light cameras. Those are revenue generators. And the idea of it is, you're trying to look for voluntary compliance, but at the same time, if there wasn't an accident, there wasn't something that happened from it, then it's just a civil issue as far as with the camera taking a picture and you just paying a fine. It's not the same thing. And so revenue generation, I think that we have to look at the state statutes and look at exactly what the county is allowed to collect money for, and making sure that we're doing it with only those means, usually with basically the property taxes aspect of it.
How do you feel Albany County government is sized? Is it right-sized? Is it left-sized? Is it medium-sized?
That came up, actually. That question came up on one of the debates that we had where only some of the people actually showed up for the debate. And it was interesting. I started looking into the statutes for being able to increase the county commissioners from 3 to 5. Here's the interesting thing. First of all, it has to be a ballot initiative, which is great because that's a direct vote from the people. However, there's also a part of that actually allows for districting. And so when you start taking a look at the amount of population you have within the city versus the county, that would probably make the districting to where you would have 3, maybe even 4 of the commissioners actually living in the city, not in the county. So I don't know if you get a true fair representation, because then you just have essentially, if you had 3 or 4 commissioners that resided within the city, that may cause issues with the city trying to expand to the county. So I don't quite know how I feel about the going from 3 to 5, but probably the biggest issue I have with it is the law for the Open Meetings Act and for Wyoming. So, if you and I were both county commissioners, we can have a conversation. We can talk about golfing, whatever we want, Eric. But if we start talking about outside, if we start talking about an issue that's taking place right now, that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. And what that does is that actually forces you to have conversations during public record. If you have 5 people on that board, you and I can still talk, and it's not a violation, because the 2 is not a quorum. They can't make any decisions at that point. So if you have 3, anytime there's 2 people talking about an issue at hand, that is a quorum, and therefore they have to be available to the public. And I think that's most important, because now everybody is able to truly understand the discussions and what's actually happening to come up with those decisions.
So back up broader than the number of county commissioners. Is Albany County government right-sized overall? Is it needed to be bigger in some areas, smaller in others? Is there some synergy that can be sought in order to live within our means of current tax levels and not see such escalation? I know just in my neighborhood, people saw tax increases of over $1,200 and not qualified relief to those individuals. They said, I didn't even receive that in a pay increase in the last 5 years, let alone last year, this year.
Yeah, for sure. The county government, I don't know the exact number of employees, but what I will tell you is the one thing we need to make sure that we're covering is our emergency services. So obviously the fire department is going to be with the city. However, there's still contracts in play to be able to cover some emergency services in the county. With your medical and your fire. Now, the law enforcement side is going to be with the sheriff. Again, we want to make sure that we have those emergency services available. Search and rescue is huge. The search and rescue in general also has a volunteer aspect to it. I'd love to see that grow because all that's going to do is help bring the community together. Because I'll tell you right now, I enjoy the snowy range, but I am not an expert in snow machining. I'm not an expert in some of the backcountry, knowing the trails. You get some of these other people that truly go up there every single weekend. They know it. They know it inside and out. Why not bring those people on board as volunteers and say, hey, help us with your expertise? We start taking a look at some more of the business side of it as far as the clerk's office, the assessor's office. Some of those are a little bit different because of the fact that they are elected positions. They create their own budget, and the county commissioners just approve the general budget. So the county commissioners don't necessarily have control over saying, hey, you guys should get rid of one position or you should hire another person. That's going to be with those individual elected officials. What we can control is the overall budget to say, hey, this is where you're at. We need to figure out how to work with 10% less. Let's figure out how to make that happen. And so the actual size of the government by personnel, I don't necessarily know if the county commissioners truly have the control over that, but we do have control of being able to say, hey, how do we reduce the actual budget to save some funds to be able to cut back maybe on some property taxes? Because I've talked to several people up in Rock River. Thad Hoff and I went up together up to one of the town council meetings, and the candidate that's running in that community didn't even show up for that. And as we were talking with the town council up there, they had some concerns because they don't feel like they're getting the law enforcement presence they have. They don't feel like they're getting the same support, but yet their property taxes are going up. And so what they're looking at is, just because the property taxes say they're going up, what's the actual resale value of that property? And it's nowhere near the same. So I'd like to see a little bit more transparency on that and making sure that we're actually looking at the actual value, not a Zillow value.
In everyone's interest, we're visiting with Chris Cleven, County Commissioner candidate in Albany County. And as we roll in the conversation, you attended a Cowboy Freedom Pack candidate question and answer.
Yes,
It was a unique format in that not every question was asked of every candidate on the panel.
It changed it up a little bit.
And that dynamic leaves. I know that as a candidate preparing for everything possible, there might have been questions that you didn't get asked that you wish you could have responded to and had that opportunity to speak to. What was top on your list at that event that was hosted at the Moose Lodge a couple of weeks back?
There was. See, I actually.
And if that wasn't the case for you, Chris.
No, I actually wrote down all the questions just because at first I thought we were all going to have the same round of questions. And
yeah.
By the time it gets back to you after 4, it's like, what was that question again? Or there was a 2-part to it. Let's see here. Let's see here. I think one of them was steps to promote economic development in the county. And I think this is one of my big parts, and I kind of touched a little bit about it. But honestly, on that day one, saying the county's open. Let's bring in some developers. Let's bring people to the table to figure that out. Because, back when I moved here in 99, I heard stories about the Budweiser plant wanting to come in. And look at it now over there in Golden, Colorado. I mean, that thing's huge. And the amount of fuel for the trucks it brings in, the amount of people it brings.
Coors in Golden and Budweiser's in Fort Collins, right?
Or is it Coors that's in Golden? I thought it was Budweiser that's
Budweiser was looking
Golden. I'm thinking
Budweiser was looking to come into Laramie, and supposedly, and then based on not enough water guarantee,
Yeah.
they were selecting Fort Collins
Yeah.
area.
Sorry, it wasn't Golden. It was is that town just north of Wellington? I can't remember the name of it, but that's what I was thinking of.
Okay.
But yeah, and so when we look at that type of business that comes in, I mean, how many hundreds of employees does that facility have? Think about the amount of income coming into our community and the business with the fuel trucks and everything else. That would have been a huge bonus to our community.
It's home to the Clydesdales.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Home to the Clydesdales.
Yes.
Can you imagine the tourist attraction? Just
I know.
tourist additional traffic.
Well, and we have
for
the
that.
land to be able to do that, and they could actually have some Clydesdales out there, like you're saying, as tourist attractions. So it would have been. I think that would have been huge. One of the other things I heard, and I've dug into it a little bit, but obviously I'm not privy to all of the executive session information that's discussed. But back when the old Walmart, for those of you guys that haven't been around long enough, but the old Walmart is now where Snowy Range Academy is. And when that was empty for a while, Cabela's, before it was bought out, actually wanted to come in. And the information that I've gathered was that some of the city officials were afraid it was going to cause too much of an impact to the local stores. And I get the idea of the local stores, but as times change, we also have to adjust to it as well. We can't be stuck and be stagnant and think that we're going to do the same thing for the last 100 years. So we have to constantly change. As a business owner, I have to change my process. With my driving school, I had to start a lot of private lessons simply because I have a lot of students that are over 18 right now that are still wanting to learn to drive. I can't just go with a basic driver's ed program. So as a business owner, you have to be able to adjust for changing times. So those are two big ones that I've heard that have wanted to come in. And I can't even imagine how many I have never even heard of that have tried to come in. And so I think that economic growth is huge. And right now, a lot of the rules and regulations are very stifling. And the county does not have all those same rules and regulations. And so I'd love to be able to see that. Even out at our airport, we've had people that are trying to build hangars and build a flight school out there. And they're basically just getting pushback. And, we have an amazing airport out at our community, and being an 8,600 foot long runway. Why not be able to have a training program out there that is quality and being able to be used properly?
Other questions at the Cowboy Freedom Q&A that you'd like to touch on here this morning?
One of them that it really wasn't a question, but I ran out of time towards the end that I wanted to talk about just a little bit was going to be the actual the airport itself. At the very first forum that I did, I learned a lot. That was the first time I did it.
Laramie Regional Airport?
Yep. Okay. And at the first forum I did with the League of Women's Voters, one of the questions that came up was, do you think that the airport is fiscally sound? And I said, no. How can it be fiscally sound if they're coming to the city and the county and combined asking for almost $500,000? If they're fiscally sound, I mean, you don't go to your parents and ask them for money if you say you're doing just fine. So Brian Harrington turned around and said, absolutely, I think they're fiscally sound. Then he went into talking about the actual violations that the FAA talked about with the airport, the previous management, and how they needed to be fixed. But he never actually addressed the fact that they're not fiscally sound, even though he just directly contradicted himself by saying they were. But he never actually presented any numbers or anything else. But I would invite you to go up to the airport's website. You can take a look at the actual budget for fiscal year 24 and 25. Their revenue estimations actually dropped, but their employee expenditures went up, and their overall deficit also went up. So how is it that you're expecting to generate less revenue, but you're still giving raises and you're still saying we're fiscally sound? Doesn't make sense.
What's the right mix of membership to the board of directors for the Laramie Regional Airport? Right now, as I understand it, it's largely city employees.
Yeah, so you've got what you've got is you have Tracy Fletcher, the county treasurer. You have Bob Southard, which is a city attorney. You have Malia Brown. I can't remember if she's with the city or retired at one time or if she's back. And then you have Dan Johnson, which is the fire chief. And I'm trying to think of who who the last person was. I don't remember it offhand. But yeah,
Is it a pilot? Is it somebody who uses the facility out there?
As far as I can't remember that last person, and again, I don't know all the ins and outs of each and every one of those people, but I don't believe any of those people are pilots or have ever been pilots. I think the only
ideally, what mix would you propose for representation of oversight for that entity?
Yeah, I would like to see. I mean, heaven forbid, I'd love to see at least one. Ultimately, I'd like to see between 2 and 3. Now, again, we want the most qualified people to be on the board, not just simply, they're a pilot, so they have to be on the board. If they have no experience managing with the FAA rules and regulations and reviewing documents, why just because they're a pilot, why would you have them there? So we want to make sure that we have the appropriate people there, but also enhancing the capabilities of that board by actually having pilots that understand the FAA rules, they understand the regulations, and quite frankly, people that are willing to actually look at other jurisdictions, something like Cedar City, Utah. Right now, the city of Laramie, the airport is rewriting their regulations for the airport. There's no reason to rewrite the whole thing. Take a look at other jurisdictions like Cedar City. They start out very clearly with their rules and regulations saying that airport is there for the enjoyment of the community and the use for general aviation. That language is nowhere in the actual current rules and regulations for the Laramie Regional Airport. So I'd like to see some more transitioning. Just like when I built our road district, I grabbed another road district in our community and I used them as a template and built off of that to make it fit with us. Why start from scratch? Why not go to another jurisdiction that is thriving and doing good, grab their rules and regulations, change and modify it to fit us, but it's already done. It's already over with.
And as you approach August 20th, how does somebody get a hold of you in your campaign? Should they like to reach out? Website, phone number, what do you prefer?
Yeah. To be honest with you, if you go to my website, my phone number is listed right on the top of that. But if you can, if you have a smartphone, you just click on it and it automatically calls me. I won't always be able to answer simply because I work full time, and I have to keep the campaign and the politics separate from my work. So I won't answer that phone during normal working hours. So the easiest thing to do is go to my website, which is cleven4cc.com. And the 4 is a number, not spelled out. So cleven4cc.com. You go to that. It has everything about me, my stance, my policies, my core values. And then it also has videos with links to my YouTube channel. There's information on there and links to the TikTok page that I'm doing videos on, as well as contact information for sending me an email. You name it. That website is the number one way to learn the most information about me and and how to get a hold of me.
As you have a vision for the future, what does your vision for Albany County look like?
My vision for Albany County is to be free, but yet still be able to grow. Looking back at the stats, and you look back at just what's out there on the internet as far as the population for the city of Laramie, when I moved here in 99 until now in 24, and you're talking a 25-year gap, is showing that we've only grown about 5,000 people. What worries me about that is, where did all the kids go that grew up here for the last 25 years? They either can't afford housing, they don't have decent jobs or well-paying jobs. So what do? They had to move out. Now, yeah, we're going to have people move and expand their families and grow. But I want to see the families with those core values of Wyoming stick around. I want to see them have generations here. Laramie is such a transient community, and I think we have the opportunity right now to change that by increasing our residential housing and giving better jobs and having communities or having companies come in and be able to try to grow to attract these kids and the families to stay here and not just move on.
The Candidate Awareness Tour 2024